welcome back to the channel. I took a big break after around the Christmas time. I hope you all had a great Christmas. Spent about 5 days off, and now we're going back into it with our Week 16 NFL Power Rankings. I'm going to give you my opinions on who is, sliding up and down the board so far. I do these every 2 weeks, so I'll do one more by the end of this season. Either way, let's get right into this video. So here we are checking into this tier list. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video if you haven't already. It helps me out a ton and doesn't cost you a thing. Either way, let's get right into these rankings. Panthers are going at 32. We don't have to talk about it. It's not a good situation for them at the moment. There's nothing about their situation that's good. They're bad. They're going to get the number 1 overall pick. Oh, except the fact that they traded that to the Bears last year to get a player that hasn't proven anything yet, which isn't his fault, but he still hasn't done anything. Next team, the Arizona Cardinals. A lack of roster talent across the board. They've had some wins here and there across this season. That's awesome. You still have a very bad roster. Pretty much undebatably the worst roster in the entire league. Moving on, the Giants. They are the next team if I can find them. I feel like I always have trouble finding them for some reason. Either way, they're our next team. The Tommy DeVito experiment didn't work out too well. Tommy Cutlets was hot for 2 weeks and then fell off a cliff. And Tyrod Taylor's playing now. They're out of the playoffs pretty much effectively. Maybe that should be higher, but I just don't think so considering they're playing very bad quarterbacks and just rotating them all in. There's just not a lot of good going on there. Moving on from them, I have the New England Patriots. They've rattled off a few good wins. That's awesome. But, I just don't think there's much else to give them credit for at this point. They're a Bill Belichick coach team. They're going to be confident. They're going to, play well throughout the weeks. It's going to happen. But they're not a very great team. And, 4 wins is probably overachieving for them at this point. Not to mention, it pretty much sets them out of the Caleb Williams, Drake May situation at the moment because they're not even in the top 4 picks right now, or top 3, excuse me. Moving on from them, the Washington Commanders are next. They could be a little lower. Maybe you might argue they are. But I just feel like, to me, they're bad. But they have some players. They have good players. Their outlook for next season and beyond is good. They have some chances this year to win some games, knock players out of the playoffs, or do some things that might hurt their chances. But they're not a good team. Sam Howell, I still trust in him. I feel like he could be a long-term option if he gets a good offense around him and the rest of the team's good. It's hard to play good offense when your defense is so bad as well. So, I think he'll be fine in the long run. It's just they have to have the right guy, and Riverboat Ron is not the man to be coaching that team for sure. After the Patriots and the Commanders, we have the Chicago Bears. They're the Chicago Bears, man. Justin Fields stinks. He's playing so good these last few weeks if you look at the stat sheets. But if you actually pay attention to the games, he throws 75 checkdowns a game and doesn't even complete most of them. And then runs for 100 yards because that's all he can do. If you're a quarterback and you run for 100 yards, that's great. It's crazy. But if it's all you can do, it's not okay. He's going to be moved off of this offseason. I am almost certain of it. And, yeah, they're just not a very good team. And Justin Fields will somehow be a Falcon, I bet, next year. But I don't know if they'll even want him because he's not going to be a long-term option, period. Next team is the Chargers. They end up above all these teams simply because, they fired their coach, but they don't have their good quarterback right now. Justin Herbert's obviously out for the year. They're obviously done for the year. There's nothing they can do to get in the playoffs, I don't believe. They're just not a good team at the moment. They could have a lot of turnover this next year with a new coach coming in, and I think they're looking to spend big. Whether it be Jim Harbaugh from Michigan or Bill Belichick, they're looking to get a serious head coach candidate in that building as soon as possible. And that'll be really interesting for this offseason coming forward. After the Chargers, we have the Atlanta Falcons. They're my next team because, they're technically still in it. They could win their division. However, they are not a good football team. Arthur Smith, he's really running his course as a bad coach. I thought he was fine, but he's proven himself wrong at this point. Doesn't know how to utilize his best players. And his quarterback stinks. Let's just be frank. His quarterback's not good. Oh, he apparently said that he was, stuck on him for the rest of the year, and then he lied about it and went to Heineke. Well, I would too, because Ritter stinks. What are you going to do? You got to get your best guys on the field, especially when you're in the playoff race, and Ritter's just not that guy. So, I don't know what you want to do. I don't know what they're in, but they're kind of just in a floating tier on their own. After them, we go to the New York Jets. They are down because, this season's over for them effectively. And Zach Wilson's out probably for the rest of the year. Aaron Rodgers is on the roster and on active, but, he's not going to play. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets in at some point, just kind of, throws a couple passes just to get something under his belt with this team, just kind of as an honorary thing or something. But at the same time, they don't want to risk him getting hurt again. So, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be shocked either way, to be quite honest with you. He might play, he might not. Oh well, who cares? They're done anyways. Next is the Tennessee Titans, wherever they might be. They're just in a bad spot. They don't have a good record. Will Levis, their quarterback of the future, is now out for probably either this week, next week, and maybe even the rest of the season. Not that it's going to be more than about 2 more weeks. But Ryan Tannehill is not the guy. They're going to move off of him this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if he's another guy in Atlanta this next year. But, I mean, what are you going to do? They're not in a good spot. This team's going to go down the drain pretty quickly. Derrick Henry is too old to be, kept around for the most part. They're going to probably end up trading him. They've got a lot of defensive guys who are young, but they have to build the rest of the team up or they're going to go down the drain pretty quickly. After that, the Las Vegas Raiders, who have rattled off a few good wins here in the last couple weeks. Antonio Pierce looks like to be the guy for the job for them. I think they are a very solid team, but nothing more than that, because you got the right guy in the building. You have some good players. Now you just have to get the great players, the playmakers, and make things work from there. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell is not their quarterback of the future. They got a Chiefs win this week. That's awesome. I predicted them to beat them the last time when they were in Vegas, but they won in Kansas City, which is probably better for them. So, whatever. But at least Antonio Pierce pretty much cemented himself as the coach of this team, in my opinion. After them, the Cincinnati Bengals. They have, you might think, oh, well, they're still technically in the race for all these things. They have, no, they're not. I mean, Jamar Chase is going to have some injuries, going to be struggling. They lost to the Steelers pretty rough this past week. And Jake Browning's just not the guy. And he had a good week, and he yelled out some obscenities and said that they shouldn't have cut him. And, well, they should have cut you because you're clearly not that good. So probably should hold your tongue a little bit, bud. Be a little humble, and maybe things will work out better for you. But either way, this Bengals team, they're fine, but they're not great. So they're done. They're not going to, I doubt they make the playoffs in any way. Next is the Green Bay Packers. They're probably done too, but that's not what matters at this point. They still played well. Jordan Love looks like he's earned himself at least one more year, and he's done it with relatively menial options on offense. None of the receivers have been healthy enough or good enough to, consider them reliable at this point. And the tight ends are all rookies, and you just don't have a lot going for you offensively. Aaron Jones has been hurt all year. They just got to figure something out, and it's not on the team right now. So it will be very interesting to see what they do next year, who they add in the offseason. They're probably going to have to look to add some running backs because I think both of them, Dillon and Jones, are off contract, and I don't think they're going to re-sign them. So either way, those are conversations for other times. Next is the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr finally had himself a good week. It took him about 17 weeks to do it, but, he had a good one. And I'm a Derek Carr truther. I love the guy. I think he's a great dude for what he seems like off the field, on the field, and all the good things. But he sucked it up this year. He just has. And I've tried to give him faith, and it just hasn't worked out. So, the quarterback is the most important player on the team, and he's got to will them to more wins. And he could definitely do it. This division is not in a spot where he couldn't. It's just not. They could go to the playoffs still, but we've got to see a lot more from him to consider this team any better than they are now. The next is the Denver Broncos, who are probably a little too high right now, honestly, because they're apparently benching Russell Wilson for the rest of the year. I don't understand that. He is the only reason they have won these games. You might want to say, oh, Russ is washed, whatever. The stats don't lie, man. He's had a good season. He has. And, yeah, there's been a couple games where he's made some boneheaded plays. I don't remember what it was, maybe like a week or two ago. They played some team, and it was they should have won, and they lost. They lost to the Patriots, but, how many of that things were on him? I don't know. I didn't watch the game. I'm going to be honest. But either way, he's not your issue, not your main issue, and you can't have that dead cap and just no player to call for it. So I just don't get why they're trying to get rid of him so easily. He's fine, and whatever. That's their problem at this point. After the Broncos, we go to the Vikings. They're working their way out of the playoffs. That's happening, and it's because Josh Dobbs' magic ran out. Nick Mullins tried it. He ain't doing it. It's just not looking good for them. The Lions are already won their division. They could get a playoff spot through the, wild card round seeds. But who knows if that happens with the Rams and the Seahawks looking as good as they are. Leading me to one of my next teams who is also fighting for a playoff spot, but in the AFC, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mason Rudolph is finally panned out after 5 years of sitting behind anybody. 3 years of Ben and 2 years of whoever else. He's finally looking like a dude. I don't know. I'm just kidding. He played one game, and he played well. I will say, Mason Rudolph's issues that he tends to have in his career are pocket management and willing to look down the field and hold the ball too long and think he has time when he doesn't. He's the awareness in the pocket's just not there for him. This week it was against a very decent pass rush. So you know, I don't know what to say. Maybe he'll play good this week. Maybe he won't, and we'll see, and we'll move on. After that, the Jaguars, who are quietly on a 4-game losing streak. For some reason, when the Steelers lose 3 straight with backup quarterbacks, then apparently the world breaks down, and everybody says the Steelers are dead. But when the Jaguars lose 4 straight games with their starting quarterback, no one really talks about it. I mean, whatever. I don't know. Trevor's not really proven anything this year. Not been very good. They're at 15. They might make the playoffs, but they're gonna have to scratch for it, man. It's looking rough for them. After that, the Texans are gonna jump them in the power rankings because at least they've won some games recently. They are dwindling down with C.J. Stroud's injury to his concussion injury right now, but they've at least looked like they're somewhat competitive, and that I'll give them that much. After them, the Colts. They've been the best team in that division as of late. I said that weird. Either way, they're a fine team, but I don't know that they're going to have any playoff success. I mean, Gardner Minshew. Let's just be honest. It's Gardner Minshew. Hopefully my Steelers get in over any of these 3 teams, or 2 of them, because one of them's going to win their division somehow, some way. But yeah, it probably won't happen. Either way, yeah, that's how they're looking in the AFC South. Our next team is the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall all the way down to 12 with the massive struggles they have taken in lately. Their offense is just not there. If you have thought they're going to the Super Bowl at any time this season, you're delusional. You're actually delusional. Because, oh, Mahomes magic, he'll carry us through the playoffs. He has so much more experience than everybody. Yeah, that's great. He does. The receivers have no experience, and they're not going to help you do anything. So, I don't know how you're going to work that in. But, all right, good job. Travis Kelce, Mahomes have been the biggest babies I've ever seen. And it's really hard to really respect you when just because you start losing for the first time in your career, you start throwing temper tantrums all over the field. So, yeah, not good look for them at all. Lost a lot of respect for Mahomes this past week. Then the Bucs. They've played well, and they're taking their division, and they're a little high. They're 11, but Baker Mayfield has had a couple really good weeks. He's fighting for a job in the NFL still, so that's just where we're at with him. The Seattle Seahawks are going to come in at 10. They've rattled off a few wins themselves over the Eagles, over some good teams. However, they have really not proven themselves other than that. So they've got a lot to work on. Geno's just not the dude long term, but they'll figure it out. I trust Pete Carroll in general. He's a guy who's going to have his team ready for the playoffs one way or another. So they could be good. They could be in. They might not be. It depends on them and the Vikings. Next is the Rams, another divisional opponent for them. Matthew Stafford's on a kick, man. He's thrown like 6 games straight without a pick or something like that. I don't know. He's got like 12 touchdowns and no picks, or that would have been from like last week maybe. So he might got like 14 or 15 now with no picks. Doing really good. If he finishes off this season well, he could easily work himself into the MVP conversation right now. Next is the Eagles, a team that is one of the better teams in the league in terms of just the roster and everything about them, but not playing well lately whatsoever. However, they did this last year. They had a couple rough weeks towards the end of the season last season, and part of that was from Hurts injuries and whatnot, but he's hurt right now. Everybody's hurt right now. You can't use that as an excuse. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this exactly. I think they're fine. I think they'll get back in the playoffs. I think they have the roster, unlike the Chiefs, to, once they get in the playoffs, their players, their playmakers, their stars, they can carry them. The Chiefs, their stars and playmakers, they can only do so much when the team isn't able to do anything. Moving on from them, though, the Cleveland Browns. And what in the world is happening in Cleveland, I don't know. A former Cleveland enemy is now their hero in Joe Flacco. But let's be real. He's like 37 years old, or maybe even older. I don't know. He's not going to keep this going. It's not going to happen. We'll see it. Oh, he's throwing 1 pick a week, but he's got multiple touchdowns. That's great. I'm not one to, vouch about 1 pick a week. I don't care. But it's Joe Flacco. There's a reason he was out of the league. So I'm just waiting for it to catch up to him. It'll happen sooner rather than later. Next is the Bills. Rattled off some good wins. Then a, iffy win against the Chargers. But the Chargers were fighting for, their lives and anything they could. And, it's the interim head coach for them as well. He's going to do whatever he can, try to make himself look as good as he can for this job. He's probably not going to get it. But the Bills are looking like a pretty good team. They're taking a slow advantage in that AFC. And Josh Allen, if he finishes off this season well, I think wins the MVP. Unless Tyreek breaks the record, or CMC does a ton of stuff in the last few weeks. But I don't see that happening. I think either Tyreek breaks the record, or Allen, like a guy like Josh Allen, has a really good last few weeks and takes home the MVP in Week 18 potentially. After them, we go to the Dallas Cowboys. Falling off, but they're still there. They're still hanging on by a thread one way or another. They have a big game against the Lions this week. 2 high-caliber NFC teams. and they have to win this game. If the Cowboys lose this game, no one will take them serious ever again as long as they have Dak Prescott on this team. And, you know, that's just what it is. The Cowboys are at the mercy of Dak Prescott. Previously, he chokes. He doesn't know how to win games. He's a game manager, and all he does is look really good when the moment is not bright. If these moments get too bright and he can't sustain himself, it's going to be a big issue in Dallas. After that, it is the Lions. They have just been really good to, like, in this season, and, you know, they have a roster. They do. Their defense ain't the best, but it's not the worst. That's for certain. They make plays. They got guys who are, you know, this team is locked in, and I think they could make a run in the postseason simply because of that. However, I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender necessarily just yet, just because of, you know, all of the things that they are. I just don't see it entirely, but nonetheless, they're a very good team. Then, the Miami Dolphins. They have just, I mean, they've lost a couple games here and there. They have a few good weeks coming up ahead. They have 2 good chances to take a hold of this conference. They have the Ravens next week. They have the Bills the week after. If they can win those games, I believe they get the 1 seed. I believe so. But if they don't, we don't know. We just, you know, it's the Dolphins. They don't play well in the postseason, as we know. And they haven't really gotten to prove themselves, to be quite fair. But either way, that's where they are. Obviously, the Niners are going to be second, and the Ravens will lead us at 1. You know, I'm not really that shocked that the Ravens beat the Niners because the Niners, they have to run out of magic at some point. Brock Purdy is not a top-tier quarterback, and star quarterbacks win games. So, with that said, I mean, it's been a great year for him. He's not an MVP. If you know football, you know that Brock Purdy is nowhere near the MVP race in reality, no matter what the betting odds show you. Either way, this is my power rankings for post-Week 16. We have 2 more weeks to come, and I am so excited for these games coming up. A lot of good football and a lot of meaningful football at that. So, let me know what you guys think, what you'd change, what you'd add, what you'd switch around, and make sure you subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a ton. Appreciate you guys. Peace.